You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. Today we address a grave injustice in the case of R. Kelly, whose constitutional rights were violated by prosecutorial misconduct that tainted the fairness of his trials. The core issue we are discussing is not about the charges themselves but about a specific egregious violation of justice, the illegal access to Mr. Kelly's private prison communications by a Bureau of Prisons officer, the subsequent leak of that information, and its use by prosecutors to manipulate a key witness Azriel Clary to testify against him. This misconduct, rooted in the unauthorized breach of Mr. Kelly's privacy, directly influenced the outcome of his 2021 New York and 2022 Chicago trials, warranting either a dismissal of his convictions, or at the very least a significant reduction in the damage done to his life and liberty. Let's begin with the facts. In 2019, while Mr. Kelly was detained at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago, a retired Bureau of Prisons officer referred to as Officer A illegally accessed his private communications a whopping 153 times. These communications included phone calls, emails, visitor logs and commissary records, personal and sensitive information that should have been protected under federal law. This was no minor infraction, and the officer's actions were a blatant violation of Bureau of Prisons policy, and potentially federal privacy laws, as she had no legitimate reason or properly sourced warrant of court to access these records. She even went as far as emailing herself a 12-page scan of this confidential material, an act that set off a chain of events that would irreparably harm Mr. Kelly's ability to receive a fair trial. This breach did not end with the Bureau of Prisons. The illegally obtained information was leaked to a third-party YouTuber, Tasha K., who publicized details about Mr. Kelly's personal relationships, including his interactions with Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage, even going as deep as to mention a $1,500 cash payment to cover their apartment bills. This public exposure of private matters was very humiliating and invasive, and its consequences went far beyond personal embarrassment. The leaked information found its way to the prosecutors in Mr. Kelly's New York case, who used it to manipulate Azriel Clary, a key witness, into testifying against him. By exploiting the personal details revealed in the leaks, specifically the revelation that Azriel Clary was not his favorite girlfriend, the prosecutors leveraged this sensitive illegally obtained information to stoke feelings of resentment and betrayal in Miss Clary, encouraging her to falsely testify against Mr. Kelly out of personal revenge rather than truth. This manipulation was not only unethical but a direct violation of R. Kelly's constitutional rights. Under the landmark Supreme Court case Brady v. Maryland of 1963, prosecutors are obligated to disclose any exculpatory evidence or material that could negate a defendant's guilt or undermine the credibility of prosecution witnesses. The FBI report documenting the illegal access to Mr. Kelly's communications should have been turned over to the defense and the facts therein presented as evidence, as it directly relates to the integrity of the prosecution's case and the credibility of Azriel Clary's testimony. By failing to disclose this report, the prosecutors together with the Department of Justice committed a Brady violation, withholding evidence that could have shown how Ms. Clary's testimony was tainted by manipulation rooted in illegally obtained information. This report, kept private by the court and not shared with the defense, is itself exculpatory because it reveals the improper means by which the prosecution secured a key witness. Had the defense in fact known about the report, they could have challenged Ms. Clary's testimony, exposed the prosecution's tactics and potentially altered the trial's outcome. But the misconduct goes beyond a Brady violation. The prosecutor's use of illegally accessed communications to influence Ms. Clary constitutes prosecutorial misconduct that violates Mr. Kelly's Fifth Amendment right to due process, and his Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial. The Supreme Court has long held that prosecutorial misconduct warrants dismissal when it is so outrageous that it shocks the conscience, as seen in cases like United States v. Russell of 1973. Here, the prosecutor's actions meet that standard. They knowingly used information derived from an illegal breach of Mr. Kelly's privacy to manipulate a witness's motives, turning a personal grievance into false testimony that bolstered their case. This is not justice. It's exploitation. By leveraging Miss Clary's feelings of rejection revealed through the leaks, the prosecutors engineered a narrative driven by vengeance and not facts. This tainted testimony was pivotal in both the 2021 New York trial where Mr. Kelly was convicted of racketeering and sex trafficking, and the 2022 Chicago trial where he was convicted of child pornography and enticement charges. Let's consider the impact on the trials. Azriel Clary's testimony was central to the prosecution's case. Her testimony as the principal witness carried significant weight as she falsely painted R. Kelly as a predator. But what if that testimony was not the product of truth but of prosecutorial manipulation? The defense was however denied the opportunity to cross-examine her on the influence of the leaked communications which could have shown that her testimony was in fact motivated by personal animus rather than objective recollection. This denial prejudiced Mr. Kelly's ability to mount a robust defense for himself as he was unable to challenge the credibility of a key witness whose testimony was shaped by illegally obtained information. The prosecution's failure to disclose the FBI report prevented his legal team from exposing this manipulation, rendering the trials fundamentally unfair. Moreover, the illegal access to R. Kelly's communications may have compromised his Sixth Amendment right to counsel. If any of the accessed records included attorney-client communications, and we have reason to believe they could have, given the broad scope of the officer's intrusions, the prosecution's use of this information would have directly undermined R. Kelly's ability to prepare his defense. Even if no privileged communications were explicitly accessed, the public leak of his private conversations alone created a chilling effect, making it difficult for Mr. Kelly to communicate freely with his legal team for fear of further breaches. This violation of his privacy facilitated by the government and exploited by the prosecution disrupted his ability to strategize effectively, further prejudicing his defense. The law is very clear: when government misconduct taints a trial, courts must act to restore justice immediately. In United States v. Chapman of 1975, the court dismissed the case due to government intrusion into attorney-client communications, recognizing that such actions violate the Sixth Amendment. Similarly, in Brady v. Maryland, the Supreme Court emphasized that withholding evidence that could undermine the prosecution's case is grounds for a new trial or dismissal. Here, the prosecutors' use of illegally obtained information to manipulate Miss Clary and their failure to disclose the FBI report documenting this misconduct meet these standards. The defense was therefore entitled to know about the report and to use it to challenge the prosecution's tactics. By keeping it private, the court allowed the prosecution to benefit from an illegal act, thereby undermining the integrity of the judicial process. Now let's address the remedy. The scope of this misconduct warrants nothing less than dismissal of Mr. Kelly's convictions. The prosecution's reliance on a tainted and influenced testimony from Azriel Clary, secured through the exploitation of illegally accessed communications, poisoned the trial's fairness. In fact, nothing presented by the prosecution can overshadow the constitutional violations that occurred. When a key witness's testimony is driven by revenge rather than truth, and when that revenge is fueled by information the prosecution should never have had, the entire case is compromised. And dismissal is the only way to ensure that justice prevails over misconduct. If the courts are unwilling to dismiss the case outright, R. Kelly's defense team can argue a significant reduction in the damage done to Mr. Kelly. His sentences of 30 years in New York and 20 years in Chicago, with 19 years concurrent, are draconian, especially when viewed in light of the prosecutorial misconduct that shaped the two trials. Miss Clary's testimony, central to both convictions, was tainted by the prosecution's improper tactics. Reducing his sentence to account for this violation would acknowledge the harm caused by the government's actions and restore some measure of fairness. At the very least, a new trial free from the taint of manipulated testimony and undisclosed evidence is warranted to give him the fair hearing he was denied. We therefore call on the courts to recognize the gravity of this misconduct. The illegal access to Mr. Kelly's communications, the leak of that information, and the prosecution's exploitation of it to manipulate Azriel Clary strike at the heart of due process. Dismissal of the charges is the just remedy, as it sends a clear message that the government cannot break the law to enforce it. At a minimum, a reduced sentence or a new trial is necessary to correct the damage done. Mr. Kelly deserves a fair chance to defend himself that is untainted by prosecutorial overreach. Justice demands nothing less. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.